Hi, I'm Chris with Afflictor Broadheads, and today we're going to talk about choosing a fixed blade broadhead. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, great, we're going to hear how to choose a fixed blade broadhead from a guy that makes fixed blade broadheads. That makes total sense. It won't be biased at all, right? Well, it's not, I assure you. We're just going to do some general things to help you consider which fixed blade broadhead might be right for you, whether it's ours or somebody else's. There's a ton of great fixed blade broadheads on the market. That being said, the first thing we're going to talk about when choosing a fixed blade broadhead is, what are you hunting? What are you going after? Are you a medium-sized game, thin-skinned like a whitetail or a pronghorn? Are you going to Africa? Are you going to Alaska? Are you chasing elk? What is your quarry? Several factors to consider in that are, if you're hunting a bigger game, are you looking at something that's more durable? Are you looking at something that you're going to be shooting long distance at, so you want something with a smaller profile? Are you looking at something you want as big of a cut as you can get with a fixed blade? So it's important to consider what you're looking at based on what you think is right for the game that you're hunting. The second thing to think about when choosing a fixed blade broadhead is the distance of your shot. How far are you going to be shooting? Are you out east where most of your shots are going to be between 15 and 25 yards? Or are you going to be shooting elk out west and you feel confident enough in your setup that you're going to take a 90-yard shot? It's very important that you pick a fixed blade broadhead that flies great at 90 yards. You can pretty much shoot anything at 15 yards. No matter how good or bad that it flies, your margin of error is very small and you'll be able to pull it off. But when you start talking about longer distances, it's much more critical to make sure that you're picking a fixed blade that is going to fly true at those distances. A major consideration, and probably the most important consideration when choosing a fixed blade broadhead, is your setup. What do you currently have? And I'm not totally talking about your bow. While that is important, poundage is definitely important, speed plays a part. I'm talking mostly about kinetic energy, and I'm talking about momentum. Momentum is the key to life as an archer. And I know that's been heavily argued, and somebody's going to beat me up in the comments about it, but it is truly all about momentum. With kinetic energy, this is the energy of an object that's in motion, and it plays a part, and yes, it's very important. But momentum is the force required to stop an object. So the more momentum you have, the more force it takes to slow it down or stop it. So the higher the momentum, the more penetration that you're going to get. So when you're looking at a fixed blade broadhead, you want to make sure that you have the proper momentum to drive it home. So if you're selecting a fixed blade that's got a really small diameter, it's got a cut on contact, very narrow tip, then you can kind of slip in and slip out, you can have some less momentum. But if you're trying to shoot an elk at 60 yards, you need that arrow weight up as high as you can get it so you can drive whatever fixed blade you picked right through that elk and out the other side, because the goal is two things. You want two holes in your animal, and if you encounter bone, you want to get through it. So momentum again becomes the key. Now I know somebody's going to comment that speed is important. Yes, speed plays a factor in all these equations, and it does have some importance. But generally, speed is two things. It allows you to miss faster, and it also allows you to penetrate less faster. Those are the two benefits of speed. If you are concerned about your speed, you need to get your speed up by shooting more poundage, not by shooting a lighter arrow. A lighter arrow is detrimental. I get calls every week. Somebody wants to try our broadhead because their current fixed blade is junk. It only penetrated 2 inches. I lost my deer, whatever the scenario may be, when in fact, there's lots of great fixed blade broadheads out there. It wasn't the broadhead, it was your setup. You're shooting 55 pounds out of a 200 grain arrow. You can't really expect that much. It is totally possible to shoot 40 and 50 pounds and shoot pass-throughs with a fixed blade broadhead as long as you have momentum. In fact, I would go as far to say, if you are shooting 40 or 50 pounds, or you have that set up for a youth or a female or a smaller frame person or somebody with an injury, that you should be considering 10 to 12 grains per inch on your arrow to get your momentum up, so no matter what broadhead you pick, it's going to do its job. Now, if you want to contest that speed is drastically important because you don't want the deer ducking your arrow, I can understand that. But the major factor here is speed is 1,083 feet per second. I don't care how fast your bow is. After 15 yards, the deer is going to hear your arrow and he's going to react to it. Very likely that that's going to happen. You need to have practice for that, have adjusted for that. But if you're shooting an arrow with the proper momentum, if the deer does get low and you have a marginal shot, you have a much higher rate of turning that marginal shot into a killing shot because your arrow did its job, it passed through, maybe you hit some bone, maybe you hit the spine, but it went in enough that you spined the animal and now you can get a quick follow-up shot in. So you want to really get speed out of your mind. Speed is dangerous. One thing that fixed blade broadheads get a bad rap for is not being accurate at long ranges. And most of the time that's because whatever setup you're shooting isn't properly tuned. Most fixed blade broadheads should fly very well at long distances. Now, of course, when you get those blades out there, especially solid blades, you are more prone to wind planing and for veering off, but there's other factors along with that that actually cause more problem. For example, if you're shooting a really steep helical on a very big fixed blade broadhead, you're just asking for problem. You have basically a kite at one end and a rudder at the other, and all that spinning just causes the potential for more wind planing. Now, properly tuned, all those things can come together, but for the average guy that has gone out, he's bought himself a dozen arrows with blazer vanes with a slight offset, they're weighted right, they're spined right, everything comes into line, you can pretty much shoot whatever fixed blades you want. Now, you may still see some problems out after 40 yards. 40 yards kind of seems to be the spot where things go haywire when we're talking about fixed blades, especially out of a crossbow. You seem to get a lot more forgiveness, of course, out of your traditional and out of your compound gear. Crossbows can be really crazy after 40 yards, especially these new high-speed crossbows. A lot of guys are having problems with the bigger fixed blade heads. So that's why on these high-speed crossbows you may want to be looking at a more low-profile fixed blade broadhead, something that's, you know, under 1.5 inches. Maybe it's a 4-blade, so you punch a really big hole. Something that has main blades that are just over 1 inch and maybe secondary blades that are 1 inch or just under 1 inch, and with a really good solid tip. That's why you get a strong fixed blade broadhead, you get a big hole. If you're looking at shooting a 2-blade fixed out of a crossbow, you could wind up in some problems when you're shooting long distance because you put a rudder at the end of your arrow. So on some setups, they're going to fly just fine, and on others, you might be lucky to hit the target at 30 yards. So you got to play around a little bit, and I know that that can get expensive, but hopefully some of the pointers in this video will help you determine, well, I don't even want to go there out of the gate. So again, when you're looking at choosing a fixed blade broadhead, you want to make sure that you've chosen the right fixed blade for what you're hunting, the distances that you're shooting, and of course, definitely what you're shooting it out of, what type of platform you're using, what type of arrow, do you have enough momentum, and you should be able to pick the right fixed blade. But if you have any questions, feel free to email us, get a hold of us online, comment down below. We're more than happy to help you out.